Hello, everyone, and welcome to Titan Capital Management, Essential Excel Functions and Shortcuts. I am Marcia Lucas, and we're going to talk today about why Excel and how to become efficient. So first, why Excel? We want to create client user-friendly files, and I'm going to tell you why that's important. And then we're going to start practicing our Excel shortcuts to navigate and to perform common functions. So first, why Excel? Because it's everywhere. It's a highly flexible tool. It's very powerful. And with a little bit of effort, pretty much anybody can learn how to use it. And so if you are a finance analyst, if you are in the finance industry, everybody is using Excel. You have to become good at it. And not only do you want to become good at it yourself, but you want to create files that are easy enough to use that you can share them with others. Now, why do I want to do this? Because efficiency is not a one-person show. It's a team effort. So if you are efficient and you can share those innovations with your team members, then your team becomes efficient. They're adding value to the department, your department's adding value to your organization, and everybody is happy. So creating files that other people can use is really important. I'll tell you a quick story about my time at PIMCO, and way back in the day I was in portfolio administration, where we created client-friendly reports, custom reports using data from our system. There was one guy on my team who was really good at this. He did it faster than anybody else. And one day I asked him how, and he really did not want to tell me. He just looked at me like, how dare I ask him? But I wanted to become efficient and help others, so he kind of had to tell me. It would have been really rude not to. And he was just using a pivot table. Pivot tables are not hard to use. They only take a few minutes and you get this great summary data. He was the guy, the go-to guy, because he had that knowledge that other people didn't have. Once he shared it, then we all became the go-to people, and he actually left the department because he wasn't comfortable with that kind of workplace sharing. But nowadays, everybody shares. It is a team sport. So innovating and then sharing your innovation is going to be really important for your success. Now, if you're going to share, you're going to have to document your spreadsheet so that other people understand what you're doing, and even that you understand what you're doing. Sometimes you create a file that you don't use except for maybe once a month or once a quarter. If you put in a little instructions page that says, go here and get the data, then put it there, and then have a formula, and here's your output, you know what you're supposed to do. It makes you faster. And if it's going to make you faster, it will make your team faster, and everybody, again, is successful. Another quick story, different guy, same department. I inherited a 16-tab spreadsheet from a colleague who moved on to another function, and it was 16 tabs worth of numbers. I had no idea where the data was coming from, which was just raw data, which was calculations or analysis or outputs. It was completely empty. I had no idea. It took me 2 weeks to go through every single tab of that spreadsheet, click in those cells, and figure out what was an input cell and what was a formula, and which function in a later tab is dependent on something in an earlier tab. Don't do that to people. Very painful. Document your spreadsheets. We're going to talk about color coding, writing a few instructions, make them easy for other people to use. Okay, enough talking. Let's do some stuff. Let's start with Excel shortcuts to navigate, and then we'll work on some common functions. Now, the shortcuts spreadsheet I sent you has 4 quadrants here, and we're going to start with that navigation quadrant at the top left. Control Home and Control End are really helpful to orient you before you do other actions within your spreadsheet. Control, hold the Control key at your bottom. There's 2 of them, but at your bottom left, and then the Home key, which is kind of at the mid right, and that will take you to the topmost portion of your spreadsheet, cell A1. If you do Control and hold down End, you'll be at the bottom right portion of your spreadsheet. So you can navigate really quickly the furthest points. Then if you want to move around, Shift right arrow takes you to the right and highlights. Shift down arrow, same thing. It's going to highlight the cells for you. Control right arrow, that moves you directly over to another cell. So oftentimes you're going to use those together. Shift and Control at the same time, and then a right arrow will highlight all the cells to the end point that Excel can identify. And then you can do another function like make it bold or copy and paste or whatever you need to do. We can't show you everything in this video, you'd be bored to death, but you do have to just practice those things so that you get comfortable navigating around the spreadsheet. Now, how does Excel know where to stop? And that's where contiguous data and separated data or non-contiguous matter. If your data is next to itself, you might have 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 12 columns of data or rows of data. Those are contiguous. Excel will go, if you do control down, it's going to go all the way to the end of your data until the point it sees an empty row or an empty column. That's helpful. Maybe I want to make an entire row bold, but not the entire spreadsheet down to column ZZZ, just my table. Control Shift Right will stop at the last cell that has data. And then you can do a Control B to bold it or whatever you need to do. You don't ever want to format the entire row or the entire column. It actually takes up memory and it makes your spreadsheets harder to use. So separate your data at areas where you want it to stop. Like let's say if you have income statement data over here and then you have balance sheet data next to it, yeah, put a blank column between those two things. Or if you put the balance sheet data below, put a blank row between those two things. But if you're working with a data set, make sure there's no blank rows or columns there. It's going to mess up your navigation. So some of the common functions once we organize our data properly would be Control C, Control V, copy and paste. Use it all the time. Control X, Control V, cut and paste. Find, Control F, print, Control P. All of these things you're going to use all the time. You want to practice, practice, practice until you develop the muscle memory. Don't go to your mouse first. First place you should go is to your keys. All right, let's do some practice. Let's go to the Shortcuts tab of your Excel file and just put some totals and simple stuff into a table. I'm going to navigate over to my spreadsheet now. In my spreadsheet, I'm going to click over to this Shortcuts tab, and if you scroll over to the right-hand side, you're going to see a little bit of a table. I put some shading to make it helpful for you to recognize what I want you to do. You go to column, let's see, in cell I-10, I've put in a little golden area. I want you to write some totals. So let's start with auto sum. Auto sum is hitting the Alt key plus the equals key, and that will sum whatever contiguous data is right above your cursor. So I'm going to look back over my spreadsheet. I'm going to navigate to J10. I hit Alt equals, and it highlights that entire column of data, and then I hit Enter, and I've got a sum. Easy. Now I'm on my sum, and I want to just copy it to the other cells. Control C, then I go Shift, right, and Control V. Okay. I didn't go all the way to the end because we don't want to sum up our margin. That would not make any sense. So if I go over to M10, I want to do a different function. I want to do an average of the profit margin. So equals average. It's going to, then I open paren. And now there's a couple ways you can do it. I can go up and then I can go Shift Control up. It goes a little too far. So I let go of my control button, just keep my shift button, and I have the right range. You can also do this with your mouse pretty much as easily. It has weird data because it's not formatted correctly. So this is going to be a little bit. So we go Alt and Home takes me to my home screen, and I want to make that a percentage, which is P, and poof. Now I want to make all of this bold. Shift Control left takes the whole section to wherever it finds that first blank column, and Control B makes it all bold. Boom. We could have done it pretty quick if we were comfortable with those keystrokes. Now let's move on to these additional functions and some formatting. You have at the top of your keyboard a bunch of F keys, function keys, F1, F2, F3, 4, 5. Those keys also activate tools in Excel and other applications. F2 is one I use a lot to open a cell for editing. F4 you're going to use a lot to anchor your cells, which we'll talk about in a later session. F5 gives you a list of places you can go in a spreadsheet. You can also do Control G for that. and other things. I do want to take a minute to talk about the Alt key. Oftentimes you're using the Alt key to activate a menu. One exception to that is the auto sum. If I hold my Alt key and hit the equals at the same time, that's what will auto sum a column of numbers up to the non-contiguous point. Otherwise, if I'm using my Alt key most of the time, I hit the key and I release it, and then I push a letter like Alt H, which gets me to the home screen. So just recognizing the difference between those. Then your basic formatting tools, we did Control B, we could do Control I for italics, Control U for underline. There's just a lot of things you can do with your keystrokes. Again, we can't go through them all now. Like I say, it would be terribly boring, but you practice so that you can get that muscle memory down. Does it work? Is it important? Should I spend the time on formatting, making things pretty? How come? Because it makes them easier to read. And if they're easier to read and interpret, then they're more efficient and people like you better. So if I have just a tab of all of this numbers and letters, it's hard for me to figure out what's going on. So the first thing I might do is to make my headings bold and put some shading on there so to differentiate them from the other data. If these are kind of categories, and then these are explanations, those are different things. So if I make the categories bold and the explanations shaded or italics, then it tells the viewer which thing I pay attention to first. First I look at the category, then I look at the explanation. It wouldn't make sense to do it any other way. So your shading and formatting helps the user of your spreadsheet interpret the information faster. And in finance, it is all about speed and accuracy. You want both of them at the same time. So just to refresh, we talked about the Alt key to activate the menu ribbon. Then it's going to show you letters, and that's what you're going to type to get to different functions. Underneath each letter will be another menu and maybe a submenu under that. If you get to a place you didn't intend to go, just hit the Escape key and it will take you backwards one menu. Once you get good at this stuff, the keystrokes, many of the keystrokes, especially the control keys, work in other Microsoft tools and even in other applications, websites, Adobe Acrobat, lots of tools use these Control C, Control V, Control F, Control P. All of those are very common. Now we're going to do some more practice. We're going to go to the Shortcuts No Format tab, and we're going to do just a little bit of formatting. Okay, I'm going to go Control plus Home. Takes me to the top corner. It just sets me up for whatever I want to do. I told you that making things bold is nice, so I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to do Control Shift over, and it makes both of those, and then Control B bold. Quick. Control Home again gets me back to that corner. Let's highlight the section here in C. Shift, Control, holding them together, and then down arrow. It's going to get that whole section italics, or sorry, whole section highlighted, and then we can do italics or whatever we want. I can do Control and I at the same time to make it italics. I can also activate my menu, Alt H, and then I want to fill that with a color, which is also H. It's right here, H, and then I can pick a color, this nice bold one. Now that section is formatted, I can copy it to another one. I want to use my format painter this time. So again, Alt and H gets me my home menu, and then where's my format painter? It's over here, FP, and that activates that one. Now, taking your format painter to another area of your spreadsheet, you really do want to use your mouse or it's going to get you somewhere you don't want to go. So I'm going to click it over there and poof. Now, one more thing that's on this sheet that we haven't talked about yet is comments. So you see this little red notation here? There is a comment in this particular box. I want to show you how it got there. I'm going to delete the note. I'm just right-clicking on my mouse for that one. And we want to activate the menu screen that can let us do those comments. So Alt, again, it activates, and then R is a review. That's where your comments are. So Alt R, and then comments are C. Alt R C. I can type. This is a comment. Okay. Post my comment. And now when I look at that cell that has this little notation in the corner, so my user knows that I can put my mouse over there and I can see good information that the builder of the spreadsheet wanted me to know. This is how you document your spreadsheets. If there's areas that are not obvious to the user, things they need to do, things they need to not do, put a comment in there and help them understand what you're trying to do. That's it for our first session of Excel skills. Not too bad, right? We're going to build on these basic skills as we go to more and more complex functions. But right now, as you stop this video, practice, practice, practice. It's about muscle memory, getting your fingers to know where to go before your brain even figures it out. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on session 2.